How has your definition of success evolved from when you first started out in the early days as a scientist to here today?
I think they've really changed because of the nature of the job. When you're in a scientific career, you define success very quantitatively. The number of papers that you publish, the number of grants that you were able to attract to your own laboratory, the number of students that you've trained who've gone on to very successful careers. Defining success is very easy as a scientist. I think as a university president, you absolutely define success by the well-being of the institution.
How do you define failure?
Failure is one of those things like pornography. You know it when you see it. And you cannot be a leader without having made mistakes. And one of the best pieces of advice I was given by Peter Lewis, a member of the class of 1955, is, for heaven's sakes, you will make decisions. You will make decisions that are terrible. As soon as you realize that, correct them. Don't let them fester. And so I think that that gave me the courage, if you will, to acknowledge when something just wasn't working and to do something about it as quickly as I could.
How is failing different as a scientist versus a university president?
So failing as a scientist is so much a part of the job that basically you can't survive unless you can let it roll off your back. Or, as I tell students whose experiments have failed spectacularly, is you've got to pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and change one thing in the experiment so that if it works the next time, you know why it worked the next time.
If you were to give a piece of advice to yourself 25 years ago, what would you have told yourself?
I think the piece of advice that I did tell myself 25 years ago that was the most helpful thing in designing my career was to basically live as much as possible a guilt-free life when it comes to balancing family and work. And it's a trick, and it's not an easy trick, but basically, as I tried to raise two extraordinary children and have a very high-pressure job at the same time, I with great determination, spent, when I was with my children, I didn't think about work. And when I was at work, I didn't think about those children. And trying basically to say, these are the two halves of who I am, and I'm going to live this life without feeling guilty about either one of them. And for me, that's what made all this possible.
Was there a lesson that you had to learn the hard way as it related to juggling both those demands?
Yeah, don't beat yourself up. I think that was the most important lesson, that there are only X number of hours in the day where you're awake, and you could only do so much. And so don't go around beating yourself up because you're not doing more here or you're not doing more here. You're doing what you can do.
When you think about the influence and the contributions you want to make in advancing women, what do you hope to accomplish? What do you hope to have done?
I think one is to tell realistic but optimistic stories about how women have managed to have very successful careers and to raise very successful families at the same time. If I have one criticism of my generation, I think we spent too much time talking about how difficult it was and not nearly enough time in talking about all the success stories. So I'm very much now in a success story mode. And when I'm often asked by younger women now how to do this balancing act between work and family, that's the biggest piece of advice that I give them, which is, reconcile yourself to being a whole person and understand that both of these are important, and so they're both going to take up your time.